I started smiling when he was saying that, because he said I was a young guy, and I'm losing my voice this morning, so I feel a lot older than that today for some reason. Thanks Melba for hooking this up for me. I'm going to just read poems from mixology, and a few of them will take a little bit of explication, just to make sure we're on the same page. I thought I would start with the title poem in the book. Is called Language Mixology, and there's a mention of a fellow named Estefancio in it, who was a slave who traveled with the conquistadors, and is credited with discovering Arizona, right? Insofar as you can discover something there where there are already people living there. Right? He was also credited with naming turkeys Turkey, so that's pretty cool. I don't know what they were called before that, but I bet they were still delicious. Language mixology, and thanks again for inviting me to Wayne State from Boston campus. Half-brother of the same halves, semicrala is fancy for absent, like bangin' means good, or off the chain means good. The same way off the hook forgets the phone, I'm forgetting the space between Oregon and North Carolina, daylight savings time and the addition of the Izzy. So silly that suffix, verbed blackface for black folks. So here you are, bouncing verbs without the face paint like an empty room bounces echoes. The mulatto question, a question of remixing our name or re-envisioning our cliche, like Bones Malone saying, life is beautiful, baby, it's just the shit in it that's fucked up. Like vocal keys looped over a fish hook. Didn't he know piano is necessary for any mulatto blues? Black key for one woman or white key for two women. You should be writing, and that combination is feminine. We've got a disputed lineage like Arizona before Estefancio named it. We got all kinds of folks acting like Estefancio, get it? Mixed man, states weren't called states, even though the pedigreed mountains and the high-silent lizards were already in place. Yeah, Estefancio pops up a lot in this book. So I'm really intrigued with this idea of, this sort of slave that was given a little bit of freedom to name things, but he was still a slave. Another thing that pops up a lot in this book are dubs. I'm a big fan of dub music, but also I wish that I could afford spinning rims, and so I write about them a lot too. Maybe I'll read a poem or something like that. And better yet. Here's a poem about one of my favorite bands, Public Enemy. I had the opportunity to see them in 1987, back when rap artists were just starting to travel. They just starting to get out of the cities and go and do tours. And they didn't know what they were doing. Like, they didn't know what they were doing. We, the audience, didn't know what we were doing, so we were all kind of standing there confused, looking at one another. And this is a poem about seeing Public Enemy back then. Public Enemy had no idea of what to do on stage in 1987, but we didn't know what to do as a rap crowd either. Attendance was mandatory, jammed into the Tyndall Armory one night after amateur boxing and one night before bingo. A bunch of homeboys kente together with African medallions, graffiti spray paint jeans, all of us mad at the conspiracy of conspiracies, staring each other down with a circular anger only black men can justify. Terminator X, his one-handed power fist cut and scratch, was the only thing keeping the revolution from starting right there. Bass lines, warning sirens, transformed into samples, refusing the WAP like the black maitre d' at the Highland Country Club refused to seat black people. My friend Richard was determined to be the first black president. He refused wine coolers and weed, white women and white lines, because the man could hold anything against him during a campaign. As president, he would buy Highlands and turn it into a black thing. Terminator X had Rich ready to say peace to the presidency, and that turned the first patch of white he saw. And when Chuck D mugged the stage, his African medallion swinging like left hooks, his baseball cap pulled down so low his eyes were the idea of eyes, the heat in that room was enough to make any Tom reconsider his friendships. And I guess Richard didn't become happy. Oh, thanks for that. It's funny, guys. I was just thinking my boy Rich didn't quite make it to being the first black president. He sells real estate in Atlanta, and it's pretty far away from being president. Right?
That's funny right there.
Yeah. Well, I read this poem. I was in Atlanta a couple of months ago, and I read this poem, and he was in the audience. And he was like, "What'd you think, Rich? Is that cool or what?" And he was like, You know, I'm in a book with an ISBN, baby. You know? So there you go. This really should have been the first black president. You know, I've had the good fortune of sort of seeing or meeting or being in the presence of a lot of really famous people. In fact, Melvin and I at the NAACP Image Awards, we're seeing all kinds of folks. I haven't written any poems about that yet, but here's a poem that is about first time I met, well, the only time I ever met Spike Lee. And it's, you know, it doesn't matter in poetry whether it's true or not, but just so you know, this is true. This is something that actually happened, okay? It's called Do the Right Thing. Spike Lee is so small, I didn't even see him at first, surrounded by black expo goers like a gumdrop in a fist. When I asked him to sign my Free South Africa t-shirt, he said, "You didn't buy that at this booth." Fresh off seeing Do the Right Thing, I crowed, "What's that got to do with your movie, Spike?" His fans laughed, so he edited me like my name was Pino. "Why you care? You ain't even black." Someone behind me said, "Damn, Spike, that ain't right." But Spike's shame scribble on my t-shirt couldn't change the missed free throw feeling in my chest. Yeah, Spike Lee, that was when I was like 14, I think, and he said that to me. You know, now, see, now I've got middle-aged weight on me. You know, if I saw Spike now, I got something for him. Whole other thing. I wouldn't go out like that. Yeah, that's not true. If I saw him, I'd be like, "Hey, Spike, will you sign my book?" This poem right here, it's about you, Chief.
You should send it to
Yeah, I should, right? Well, you know, like at least I'm not, not physically intimidated by the man, that's for sure.
Send him the book.
Yeah, just like to get into it, right? Well, you know, I always wondered if, you know, I mean, if he ever ran across, I mean, poetry doesn't have that kind of, you know, circulation, but I always wondered if he seems like the kind of person that might look around for his own name, you know, and so I think you might have run across this. We were talking about Bob Kaufman on the way up here. Bob Kaufman's a poet that I'm hugely influenced by. So here's a poem about Bob Kaufman. It's called Bob Kaufman Trip. In the unravel of circumstance and clout, some things remain hinged. The manifesto of three-eyed sight and funk sight, piss smelling of jail cells, jails hemmed from lowest bid concrete and tin cups manhandled in a rib cage. And a universe of falsettos, who ain't a troubadour? The lockpick. And a world made of water, who ain't aquatic? The lock baby. A buzzard perches on the crucifix of my head. Bob, Madeline, me a fresco of brick and bar. Haiku, the story tells quickly like Q-Tip and his El Segundo party. Give me cranial, discarded on dinner napkins, scribbled Mad Dog bag, lifetimes forgotten every so often like fishes forget. 1986. Wandering San Fran, wild-eyed and wheezing trochees, even if people in France still remembered you. What profit is there in blood when down in the pit? Nothing. No room for the whiff of tambourine and wine light, no fromage, no room for you or your poems. And I really like Bob Kaufman. He's got a book called Cranial Guitar. It's a collection of his poems. You should check it out if that's your thing. You know, in addition to Dubs and Estefancio, this Free South Africa t-shirt pops up in a bunch of my poems too for some reason. For those of you that aren't old enough to remember this, when there was apartheid, those of us who were well off enough to be indignant but not willing to do anything would buy these t-shirts that said Free South Africa on them. And I had that t-shirt for a long time in spite of what happened with Spike Lee. So here's a poem it's called This Be the Verse, after Philip Larkin's poem of the same name, but that t-shirt pops up in the middle of it. It's got an epigraph from Radiohead. It's the 21st century. This be the verse. This is the skin they put me in, my mom and dad. Remixed melanin oleo for the asthmatic and colorblind. See how bronze is on command. See how my hybrided daughter looks darker while on the beach with me. If my skin was a chicken wing, I'd lick my eyebrows before code switching inflections. If my skin were a woman, I'd check my leopard print steering wheel at the door. I'd transform my crust of rust and sea salt into something more 21st century. Borges says, things belong to the past quite quickly. So I'd throw some butane on my funk transistors, face paint my brown Band-Aid convocation, and toss my sweaty Free South Africa muscle shirt to the crowd at the recycling bin. I'd leave it to the ghetto fabulous to ID the magical backspin of skin.